every story boils down to one or two or three generalizable truths. What happened to you people? Said, yeah, we learned about this. Bullshit.
You have so much information because your objective and your visions are not clear. So I was shocked. So 10 days I didn't sleep. No, really I didn't sleep.
What do you think makes a compelling portfolio, let's say?
Our own capability of whether we have competence in that tool.
What about the grey areas? How do we map that out?
Triggered at your statement of Python is so easy to learn.
Welcome to the SigChai podcast, where design, technology, creative competition and system thinking come together over warm, thought-provoking conversation and of course comforting cups of chai. So let's grab a cup and dive right in. Let's have cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers. Today we are joined by our own two faculties whose work spans across from satellites to software, data to drama, and tech systems to teaching studios.
So with us are Professors Vivek Garady, who is the head of CSE here at Srishti Manipal, which is Creative and Applied Computation, and we have Professor Arvind Venkatadri, whose background includes ISRO, CDOT, Texas Instruments, etc.
Okay, so before starting, let's spill some tea about our guests here. How do we do that? We will play a game called Two Truths and One Lie. So we have a list of truths given by guests, and we have mixed a bunch of believable lie into it. So you guys have to guess each other's lies, and whatever the truth is, we have to hear the stories about it.
Sure.
So Vivek, here are three statements about Arvind, and you need to try to spot the lie. First is Arvind knows 5 languages. Second is he organizes treasure hunt parties for his apartment society. And third is he lost 5 lakhs in the stock market.
5 what? 5 lakhs? It's crazy. Okay.
The way I know Arvind, he's a very judicious person, very pragmatic, and his risk appetite is very low. So I don't think he has lost 5 lakhs. I think it's a big lie.
So Arvind,
We need to know.
Tell the truth.
tell us the truth.
I think I'm right.
I didn't lose 5 lakhs.
Yeah.
That is true. The other first two are obviously the truths. I do conduct treasure hunts in my apartment complex, and the first one is also true, but no, I didn't lose that much money this time around. Even though the market went down by 12%, I didn't.
Oh,
Okay.
that's interesting.
Okay,
My
so
observations as truth right.
Yes.
Spot on, Vivek. Spot on. Yeah.
So now it's Arvind's turn.
Okay.
We'll tell you 3 statements about Vivek, and you have to guess which one is the lie. So the first is that he is a certified ethical hacker. The second is that he once debugged code during a wedding reception. Third is that he once helped reduce IT support costs from $105 to $35.
I'll go with the wedding one. I don't think Vivek is likely to hurt the wedding ceremony by debugging code at that time.
Okay.
So
I
Vivek,
think, yeah, absolutely.
that's good.
Once in a lifetime, I don't want to. Yeah, that's true.
And what about the other truths?
Well, they are true. They are true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm certified as an ethical hacker. Well, my license is expired now.
Okay.
Okay.
So not anymore.
What a pity.
Yeah, not
So
any.
is that a lie?
No, it's
Technically, yeah.
Alright.
you can
I'm
renew
not
it anytime, right? Yeah.
So now it's Vivek's turn. Just a second. Where is it? So there's another round for Arvind. Alright.
Oh.
His birthday is on Children's Day. He taught machine learning to a group of 10-year-olds, and he remembers your full government name if you have been in his class.
Oh, I think the last two are true. The first one could be a lie.
Arvind?
His birthday is not on Children's Day. This is my guess.
Yes, I do remember all your government IDs. I remember your names.
Yeah.
I address you by all your IP addresses. If you
Oh my god.
I
Yeah.
did try teaching machine learning to 10-year-olds
Yeah.
once.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first one is obviously right.
Lie.
Well, my guess is right.
Yeah, we know each other very well.
So last set, Arvind, here's your final round. First is Vivek completed a solar physics course. Second is he has a tattoo of a binary code on his forearm.
Oh.
And third is he once managed 319 applications across 230 engineers in a single outsourced program.
I'll go with the binary one. I think he will have a more complex tattoo than just merely a binary code.
Is that true?
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
much more complex that
Oh my god.
Fantastic.
No, when I said
What?
true, that is his guess as a lie is right.
is right.
Oh,
But
Do
what
you
is
have
the
a
tattoo?
much-
No, I don't have any tattoos.
No tattoos.
oh,
no
no
tattoos.
tattoos. Okay.
But if you
Got
were
it.
to have any,
Would you like a binary code?
Maybe a architectural diagram. A little more complex one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Got
so
it.
let's shift some gears now, and we can talk about some of your career journeys.
So Vivek, your background is in project management, agile, ITIL and big data is very systems focused. So what led you to creative competition and teaching design students?
Yeah, it goes back to my past experience, especially in Schneider. So I was given a task to actually go hire engineers.
Okay.
So I was there in NIT, NIT Kozhikode. This was I think 2012 or 13. This is one of the key events actually which spawned into a teaching career. So I went there, we interviewed, we had a lot of discussions with almost 600 students. And out of 600 students with GD group discussions, everything, I think we shortlisted 60.
Okay.
Then we went through an interview process. But unfortunately, we could not hire anybody. Not even a single person. Not that the students are bad. Okay, they have not been trained, or they have not been imparted skills or any capability which actually matches the IT industry.
Right.
It's not that they're below average or something like that. No, they are smart, but they don't have the capability what the IT industry requires. So this was like eye opener, and we had already spent 15-20 lakhs just to travel there, spent 1 week there. Okay, the ROI was 0, and it was crazy actually, and that's the case in many schools and colleges.
Right.
So they're not aligned to what the industry is required. So that was one of the motivations for me, and my family has been in education. My mom was a co-founder of a school. So this way, I was deeply interested in imparting what skills I had, and I was in the industry.
Right.
I thought it will be more apt if a person from industry comes in, imparts just like Arvind, right? So that was one of my motivations.
Right. So how was the shift from tech to design industry?
Well, it was smooth.
It's more
Absolutely.
Because
Yeah, you bet.
I was very much inclined.
right.
I was, it was actually daunting in me to go and teach, and I was actually teaching over the weekends.
Okay.
So, but then I said, let me do it officially. So that was a great move for me. Yeah.
Makes sense.
So Arvind, you have worked in highly technical environments like
True.
ISRO, CDOT, Texas Instruments. Before moving to education and even philanthropy, what connects the dots for you?
All the 5 languages, right? If you work in tech, you talk only in English. And I really wanted to work in a place or do things where I could talk in Hindi or Kannada or even Urdu, which I know a little bit about, right? So, which is why tech didn't offer me that opportunity. Whereas getting into education allowed me to talk in more than one language. So, I wanted to do that, and that's really marked my foray into education.
So you were interested in having multicultural sorts of...
Yes, I do. In fact, I try to bemuse my students by talking 5 languages in the classroom at the same time, right? That's the fun part of, I have to have fun in the class, right? So I talk 5
That's
languages in the
right.
class, and that adds spice to the whole thing.
So now I have a question for the both of you. Like during both your classes, do you guys see yourselves leading more into like a technical expertise or into a creative intuition when you're working with your students, let's say?
You want to go first?
I would think both. I mean, those are check boxes, right? I mean, you have got to be tech. If you're teaching tech, you have got to be solid. And then if you just parrot it out like that, without the creative part, without engaging surprise and anger and all those emotions, you really can't teach.
Sure.
So I would say both those two are a given. They have to be so, right? What I try to do is to go beyond that, to gamify it, to create even more surprise, to even see immediately how you can apply what we just learned. If we learn a certain model, call it whatever you want, can you go outside the classroom and immediately see evidence that the model works? Those are things that I try to try. So that's me.
Awesome. And you, Vivek?
I totally concur with what he said. I'll complement that. Yeah, we start off with, generally I like to have a discussion with them. They have to see a necessity, why this model or this, it could be any technical stuff. Why is it required? Where does it sit? Where does it fit? So that is very important.
It's got to be life altering.
Exactly. So we start with the dialogue, and then we go deeply into the technical aspects. We have to delve with technical aspects. Otherwise, you can't learn that.
So even us as students, we have to navigate between structural thinking and ambiguity of design exploration. So how do you facilitate or like help students balance between these two?
Well, it's an interesting question.
Nice question.
Like bridge the gap between.
It's something like syntax and semantics,
Right.
right? So syntax is important, but the structure is important,
True.
right? But that's not the only, what should I say, motive. One has to understand how you can use a language to express something. If it's programming, it's not just to learn the structure and its pros and cons. I won't say cons, pros, the strengths. The other thing is the semantics. How you can express a solution, right? It could be various features of that.
Right.
Okay, I think that is very important. That will come only when you actually start making something, right? You'll have to make something in that context. Also need to understand the history of that, right? For example, if you take a look at programming languages, we have more than 1,000 so far. So why Python? Why R? So there are reasons. People have built it with certain intent. So the history is important.
Right.
Yeah.
If you look at the so-called dichotomy between the creative process of brainstorming and idea generation and the one that is process oriented, I like to do bits of both. I think if you do only brainstorming, then you're not a designer. If you follow only process, then you're losing out on a lot of things. You don't get the right kind of ideas, right? So what I like to do is to have a bedrock of process that puts you in the best possible place where you can make that creative leap. So I wouldn't start with brainstorming. I wouldn't start with intuitive, but I would say, okay, let's do the process part first, whatever that means, and then put ourselves in a position where we can make that metaphorical leap across the cliff to use our intuition and get the idea going. So for me, process works first, intuition works just a little afterwards.
Oh, that's interesting.
Interesting. So next we have a bit of a design debate, like it's a lightning round situation.
So we have got a list of spicy statements which you can agree, disagree, or challenge the premise entirely.
All right.
So first, I would like to come up with one. Hackathons reward speed versus like not good design. So what is your take on that?
I think speed is the need of the hour there, and generally people inclined to speed because they have to finish something.
Yeah.
So that is there's always that pressure is always there, and in that the realm of the pressure you might sort of stumble on the design aspect.
Right.
So in a way it's right.
It's right.
Yeah.
Okay. What
In a
about
way.
you?
I still like to use my process versus intuition thing, right? And there was similar task given to a bunch of introverts, bunch of people, right? Turned out that the introvert people spend 25 minutes planning and 4 minutes executing.
Okay.
Whereas the sensory non-introvert people made multiple iterations. And it turned out that in those 4 minutes, they were able to sort the whole thing out completely, right? Now, this may be not applicable out here, but I like to think through the problem very completely before I say, let me touch that damn thing and fool around. Yeah, I need to know what I need to know. I need to know what I know before I meddle with things. So that's just me.
But don't you think hackathons have like a solution-driven approach over?
True. But
Yes,
then
yes.
if you're going to meddle with things without knowing what's in there, you're likely to more damage than anything else. That's the way. So I'm risk averse, as you said, but I like to take the risk as well. So
Right. Interesting.
The second is biometric technology will open the door to emotional intelligence. What do you guys think about that?
to emotional, what did you say the last word was?
Emotional surveillance.
Surveillance,
My
right?
bad.
So you will know
Yeah.
whether I like you or don't like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like you. There's no problem with that.
No, it's the question is like biometric technology has this.
I know. So if you think I'm sweating out here, I'm
Possibility
tense, and if I'm comfortable, I'm not so tense, and so on. Yeah. Yes, I think that's a possibility, but I think it can be used for good. For example, I need to know what state I am in, and it can be used as a feedback mechanism for make me more confident, right? If I am petrified with stage fear and I don't know that I am, or I'm hesitating or doing funny things, then having this machine tell me that my emotions are running away with me allows me to prepare a little bit more, visualize a little bit more, and deliver my content more. After all, we are all talk show artists here as teachers, right?
Right.
We have to be, right? And you can't be anything less than that. So I think for me, that surveillance as a teacher is actually a good thing.
Yeah.
So an interesting statement I have is related to both of you actually very deeply, because it's related to coding, since both of you are CSE faculties. Should everyone learn how to code, even like artists, let's say?
You bet. You bet, absolutely.
100%.
Coding is a way of thinking. It's not just merely the language and the semantic. That's okay. But if you learn to code, you think systematically, step by step by step. I mean, there's a code running out here. There's the camera, the action,
Yes.
lighting, the diffusing, everything else, right? So if you start coding, you will know what comes after, what comes before, how the planning should be done, what is the big ticket item, what is small ticket item. So it teaches you critical sequential thinking. And I think coding should happen. That's why coding should happen.
100%. Okay. First, you are able to manage your resources very, very clearly and efficiently. Second, your thought process becomes very clear. So it's easy for me to talk to a programmer than an artist. I'm not saying, I'm not putting down artists, no. So the way they think is different, where a programmer thinks is different. And I think logic is part, it's innate.
Yeah.
Okay, it cannot be proved. It's not an inborn act per se, but there is logic in everyone.
Yeah.
It's a question is how, when do we enable that,
Yeah.
right?
That's true.
So artists are coding now. These days artists are coding.
Yeah, that's good.
See, the problem is creativity is always referred to artwork because artwork is tangible.
Right.
Either it's painting, sculpture, music, theatre, right, or a film. But a coder's work is intangible. Okay, there's a lot of code under this.
Right.
No one can see that,
Right.
right? That's one problem, and that's a big fallacy. Yeah, I'll stop here.
Alright.
Okay, so data visualization is the new storytelling. Do you think that? Agree or disagree?
Data doesn't speak for itself, right?
Right.
If you get data, you can't really glean what the thing is saying. So visual is something of a gateway, but you still need to take the geometry embedded in the visual and make the metaphoric sense out of it. So if a bar is too long or a line is too thick or a triangle is somewhere else, you need to decide what's an outlier, what is a extra bit of thing. So yes, storytelling is a nice cliched way, I would say, forgive me, to saying it. But I think it goes deeper than that. There are metaphorical meanings to be gleaned from visualization, which is why the visualization is not a fixed thing. You need to keep iterating and making different visuals and say, this makes sense to me and now I know what to do. So it's more like knowing, making sense of the geometry is what I would say.
What do you think?
I think he's answered everything. So the context is very important. Okay, basically it's context. And through the context you see different perspectives, right? Yeah.
So is data without context just noise?
Yes, by and large, yes. You might take an example, suppose I just check my BP,
Right.
let's say it's 140 by 90. It's high BP, it's
very high,
hypertension.
yeah.
But if you don't understand my background, maybe I come running from Rizak,
Right,
so
okay.
my BP will definitely rise.
Right.
So without context, the data has no meaning, right? The moment you have a context,
So right now we are in a new age where AI is the hype, right? But the real danger isn't that AI is replacing designers, but that designers are starting to think like AI. What do you think about that?
AI
So-
is replacing designers.
No, the real danger isn't in that AI.
I think AI is a very well-read friend. Right? I read 5 novels last year.
Yes.
AI read probably 40,000. I could never catch up with that. Right? So if I am solving a problem in design, the AI will tell me that the remaining 39,995 books have these references, if possible, to that problem. That will give me extra grist to my mill. Right? I will get maybe 3 references out of the books I read, which apply to the problem. But I get a dozen more from AI saying this is a possible angle that you might consider. That fuels my creativity. Right? So that's my view of how AI would be used by a designer. So yes, it helps designer, but I don't think there's replacement going to happen. The designer will be enhanced by the fact that they use this extra input from the AI.
I'll just complement what he said. Basically, it increases the productivity of the designer, right? If you look at, Gartner's article, so they have a graph. So you have experience versus complexity of a task. So lower the experience, your AI basically is replacing you. It can do everything. Higher the experience, your what AI can actually augment, enhance is a little, but it increases the productivity of the person.
Right.
So it's like something like that.
Definitely, I think that in our design journey or in our design processes, AI can definitely enhance or make our processes much more efficient. Which brings back to our previous point: should designers now approach our process like in a way that we are much more multidisciplinary? We know coding. Should we know what other things or skill sets should we know as designers? Since our tasks are going to be much more efficient.
Right. Yes, if design, the moment you try to bottle something, or build boundaries. When you say this is the method, okay, so there are boundaries for that because it's already cast in metal. Point A, task A, task B, or process A, B, C, D. So the sequence of steps. So you are able to document that because based on past experience. Tomorrow you might face a new problem where this whole process might not fit. Could be a misfit.
Right.
You have to be open to that. Okay, that's very important. Documentation is important so that you can improve, you can actually reflect on that and make changes to that.
Like tailoring according.
Tailoring is one, right? So AI will really pitch in when beg your pardon, you say something else. The last sentence. And must know.
Diverse skills
Multidisciplinary.
as a design.
Right. I mean, skills are very important. Capability also very important. See, skills are because you're learning something and you're applying it. Okay. Capability, the outcome of what is the outcome of a skill? Some task will be completed. The outcome of a capability, what is the capability? Outcome is the capability.
Right, yeah.
Right. So two are different. Two are very different. So the skills are required. Skills have to be practical in this context. Capability is more important. Right? There has to be an outcome. Tangible outcome has to be there. Otherwise, just with skills, you can't do much.
You have to align with capability and
so skills will be changing. Right? Capability will lag behind in terms of dynamism, in terms of change. Right? But skills will be changing. Tools will come. Hundreds of new tools will come. You have to be open to that.
But in an environment like Srishti, let's say, students are expected to, learn almost every single design tool, even if they're not interested in them. Like, what do you think about that?
I think you have to go with an open mind. You can't say I'm interested because you don't even know which tool is meant for what. You know at a very high level. It could be Blender or it could be some framework using Python or Java or something like that. You have to be open. You have to learn. See, if you're really interested, you'll learn everything. Okay, it's as simple as that. So you have to be open, you will have to indulge, you'll have to make things and then play around with that. Otherwise, if you're very closed, it's difficult. You won't be able to appreciate the ecosystem there.
So do you agree with the statement like jack of all trades, master of none is still better than master of one?
No, I think you have to be a master of at least one.
Okay.
It's very important because you won't be able to decipher many things otherwise. Right? For example, it could be coding. Let's say you've just learned Python a little bit and then you learn a little bit of C. You won't be able to build something, substantial. If you know something really well, then you can actually intuitively you can guess that okay, this feature could be here. Maybe I can do this how I use Python to develop something. Maybe that feature is also here or this attribute is also here. So you're able to scale up faster using some other tool also.
But also like at our age, we are not like really masters of something. We are exploring and dabbling into different courses and tools. So we're just like jack of most of the trades that we can leverage ourselves at. And even in industry, like if we have like a couple of skill sets, like a diverse set of skills, then it increases our possibilities of interning there or providing value to the company. So in that sense, how do we leverage our mastery of one particular thing? Because we are navigating right now in our 20s, and mastery comes when you have spent like significant number of years in a particular thing, like let's say 5-6 years, you've just gone deep into it. So what do you suggest for us? Like how do we find one mastery over a skill?
See that we have made it easy. If you look at CSE, so we have said start with Python. Okay, because Python is very simple to learn. It's English like language, and there are millions of libraries. So you don't have to get into basic plumbing, right? So that the jump start we already given, right? So you are free to explore everything else, but you will have to focus on one language so that you understand the complete construct of a language. Okay. I know it's only 4 years program, basically 3 years, right? First year is foundation. That is fine. As much as you can learn in 3 years, that should suffice. But important thing is you focus on one language and be exposed to others. You may take some, like generative code, or like generative art as one of the studios. So there you may learn processing of P5, right? You may learn a little bit of JavaScript. That is fine. All that will help you somewhere. Because today it's not just one language which is working in the world, right? It's fully disparate, right? You have hundreds of languages interacting with different applications, different languages. So you have APIs and all this stuff. So that's still okay. The question is, we have chosen Python because it can jumpstart you very fast.
I feel like a lot of people are going
Yeah.
to be triggered at your statement of Python is so easy to learn.
It is easy. I learned Python when I joined SIGCHI.
Oh,
I was working on Java.
okay.
Okay, so yeah.
I think you people need to resemble a team. Meaning that in certain things you are really depth. If you're film, you really need to be solid about the film stuff. But in a whole bunch of other things, you need to be at least be able to sustain a 5-minute conversation. Be it chemistry, organic chemistry, ecology, biology, carpentry. You need to know it. You can't say, I don't know this stuff and I'm going to be caught flat-footed. So if your personality, your intellectual personality resembles a T, that would be the best wish I could have for you.
Awesome.
That's a great way of thinking.
Yeah.
T.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, it fits you like a T.
Yeah, it's
So
like
yeah.
convergent and divergent thinking.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
So, yeah.
See, other important thing is many students ask this question. I know a little bit of everything. I keep taking different courses. What does it roll up into?
Right.
The other way of navigating is if you have something interesting. I think you take the interest or idea through all these studios. Right? It could be coding. Maybe you were thinking maybe it's branding. Okay, you're interested in branding. So how can I actually codify that?
Right.
Okay. Now you go into, let's say, visual arts, maybe a logo example. Then you take the idea into, give me something else, films. You want to make a nice short film about your product. So you have to take your idea through all these dimensions.
So
Then
we extrapolate our idea.
Exactly. So that's also one way of navigating, which gives you opportunity, clarity, navigating this complexity.
Right. That's awesome.
Interesting.
Huh. So our next segment is teaching tools, data and design education.
So Vivek, you have moved between system architecture, creative coding, and now machine learning. How do you get your students, especially from a non-tech background, to see code as more just than syntax? Like, how do you help them use it as a tool to think in system structures and ideas?
That's a horrendous task.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's very difficult, but in fact, I had one studio on foundation for coding long time ago. So I asked them to, I gave them a task. So I made a couple of teams. So then asked them to choose less than 10 verbs, maybe 8 verbs, to describe an activity. So one team I asked them to build a wall, not physically, but to build a wall. You have a basic building block, that's a brick. You have only 8 verbs to explain how you are going to build the wall. Then one more team I gave them some tasks like this.
Right.
So if you have to describe building a wall of 10 feet high with 7 or 8 verbs, there are certain challenges, right?
Right.
You lay the first row, then again the second row, third row.
Or you can sing
So
Pink
like-
Floyd.
Exactly. Yes. So multiple tasks like this. Other one is to build something. So then ask them to spell out the pseudocode. Okay. So they can't use anything other than the 8 verbs. So then they realize, look, there is something called loop. You have to iterate, right? You lay the bricks of one row, then second row, then third row. Then you have to measure. Is it 10 feet? Is it 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet? So there's a decision making. So the if-else construct is there in coding. Then you have a loop. So they figured out all the different constructs required in a programming language. Then they said, wow. So you take any language, you have loops, you have if-else statements, you have memory variables, different data types. So then they're able to appreciate that. So maybe we'll have to reinvent ourselves every time to teach the new generation.
Like
I think it depends on the
adapting.
purpose, right? You need to say, we are going to make this thing, whatever it called. Let's say the wall is a great idea. I'm using the wall in my class. We're going to build a wall, right? And each of these things becomes a brick that goes in there.
Yeah.
And you still have to get the mortar and the cement and stuff, and you want to still paint it and do Rick and Morty on top of that. All that is where you add the stuff to make the product it is. But unless you have a end product in mind, it's hard to learn loops and syntax and variables, and it doesn't make sense. So teaching this way, alphabetically landing up to sentence is the wrong way. I would say this is the paragraph we want to write. Let's get backward to the words.
Yeah.
So with the end in mind is a much easier way of teaching and learning than the forward alphabetical way.
So more like convergent.
Well, how do you read Shakespeare? You read Shakespeare because you read Shakespeare, and if you don't understand a particular word, you go to the dictionary and pick it up.
Right.
So you start with the hard thing and say, this I have to do, but I don't know this stuff, I'll go back and pick that up and come back. That's a much easier way, and it fits your recently acquired knowledge fits into the purpose very nicely, rather than going this way and somehow magically it will come together. That won't happen. Yeah, so the purpose is the better idea then.
I really like the statement where you said you need to have an end goal in mind,
Yes.
and then you can build forward.
Right. Yeah.
Also, one thing that I had, a question that I had, in design education, we are mostly building, let's say, not real life projects. It's like hypothetical projects. So how should students navigate towards building these projects, which is not there in real life? Like, how is it different from real life projects?
I think you need more access to reality. You are very, very sheltered out here. Right? I don't know, how many strangers do you talk to in a day?
Very little.
Very few.
Very few.
Right? If you were to talk to even the housekeeping
Yeah.
or the guys who serve you food, your life would be altered. Right? I think you need more and more access to random events happening in reality. And then your surprise and disgust, everything will kick in to say, this is the problem and I'm going to solve it that way.
Right.
Then even your little mock-up project is a good solution. And somebody will say, okay, it takes money, right? Why are you not building big things? You don't have money and you don't have time. But if you make that little mock-up thing pointing in the direction of solution, somebody will say, yeah, I can throw $1 million at this and I can throw 10 people at this, and your Shark Tank will say, take it. Right? But I would like that reflection of reality and the conviction that that problem actually exists. And I don't see enough of it. I see some, but I don't see enough of it here.
So are you saying primary research is not enough to understand real
Well,
life?
that's again the cliched term of primary research,
Yeah.
right? I would like you to have just go out there and get the arrows hit you, right?
Right.
It's
want
not
to
have a
add something?
controversy. I like to have a controversy in the class. All designers use Windows and all artists use Macs. Just provoke the hell out of them and say, is this true? Because we go through life making all kinds of hypotheses about how life works, right? This thing happens and therefore that thing happens. This happens because that happens, right? So start with those hypothesis making mechanisms in class. And I like to even portray opinions from my mouth, which I actually don't believe. I just like to say, look, half the faculty in SIGCHI is gay. This is a good kind of controversy to create, because people say, hey, let's go and find out, right? So then you'll have to figure out, how do we do this quietly? What kind of survey mechanisms? How do we figure out somebody's lying? There are question mechanisms where you will not embarrass me, but you will still get the truth from me by framing the survey question in some way. So all the technical tools come into play there, but you are deeply motivated because this question is absolutely burgeoning in your mind, right? I'm not saying you should do this, but that's the kind of stuff which you do, right? Okay, artists smoke more than designers, or something of that kind, right? You make this kind of stuff up, then that's a hypothesis that drives data collection, data analysis, statistics, your p-values, all that stuff comes together there, and you say, okay, we figured out that, this is what is true and this ain't true. That's a great way to learn.
That is another interesting perspective.
Controversies are fun.
Since we are talking about data collection, data can be both qualitative and quantitative.
True.
And oftentimes it's easier to collect quantitative data, right? So what about qualitative data? And while we are working with such large data sets, how do we ensure that this quality or this nuanced aspect of data is not lost when we are kind of trying to summarize?
Are you talking of the collection part or the processing part of the whole thing?
A little bit of both.
Little both.
Yeah.
Right? If you think that in your problem, gender, age groups, income groups, distance to college plays a role, then those are categorical variables straight away.
Right.
You can decide whether these variables are binary or ternary. For the high income, mid income, low income, male or female, old, not so old, and very young, right? Then you say all these categorical variables are 3 into 2 into 3 into 2. That's the total number of possible squares you have in your design, right? And then you say, okay, if I have so many, will I actually get 20, 30 people of each kind? Will I actually get an old person who travels 30 kilometers who teaches this way? And that's me.
Right.
And you have one outlier. That is not data really. Right? So then you say, okay, you first put a wish list and then say, okay, maybe these categorical variables are not to be used, or they have too many levels, like old. So then you finally come at a 4x4 or a 3x3 kind of thing, and then get yes, no kind of answers for everybody. Do you believe in abortion? Right? And they say yes, no, and you have different kind of thing. And then you can do a different kind of statistical test which applies only to categorical data, which is yes, no. That's very different from a quantitative kind of test. So stats gives you both tools.
Understood.
I'll just compliment what he said. I think, excellent. Thank you for that answer. The other important thing is your vision has to be very clear.
Yeah.
Right? Your objective or the vision. If that's not clear, you'll just keep collecting a lot of data. You will not know where to, look at. If your vision is clear, then you know the distribution. Right?
Makes sense. So, Vivek, you have worked on enterprise-grade tools like SAP, Oracle BI, and Splunk. And now in classrooms, you are using R, Quarto, and creative coding platforms. So, how do you see the shift in how we use tools from reporting systems to exploratory learning environments?
See, nothing has changed for me. I've been coding.
Yeah.
Though I've used different platforms, I've been coding. So, really nothing has changed. Okay, those are enterprise applications.
Yeah.
Now I'm coding as an individual with the students. So I really don't see much difference. Okay.
So for you, is adaptability one of the main things?
I can adapt anywhere for anything. See, as long coding is, that's the beauty of coding. Right. I can learn a new language. I told you, right? I learned Python only after joining SIGCHI.
Yeah.
Okay, I was coding in Java.
Right.
And C and C++ and all this stuff. So it is nothing new as such. So
I think it's one of the access. Right? In the enterprise world, you had a certain language. In my time, Fortran, Pascal, assembly, and so on. And the layperson outside would not know what we are doing.
Yeah.
Today, it's not the case. If I'm doing Fortran, heaven forbid, there are a bunch of people who will say, okay, we know Fortran. Yeah, what kind of subroutine are you writing? So the sheer access to the language and being able to do that kind of, because compute power has become democratic, access has become democratic. Earlier, you need a microvac sitting in an AC room inside ISRO to actually do Fortran. Now anybody can hack it, right? So compute power and the democratizing of the language, it has changed the picture completely. Anybody could be doing anything sitting in their drawing room. They could be coding, and that's the great part of it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But when you also try to apply for jobs, a lot of time there's this description, you need 5+ experience in this language or that language. So even though we here are very open-minded in what sort of tool we are using, how can we also make the corporate world or like real world aware of that fact?
See, that has been a challenge
Right.
from very long time. Okay, you have passed out from college. How can you have experience, right? That's why we are actually working with. SIGCHI, we are working with many corporates like SAP, Microsoft, Google. In fact, we are building a platform called Engage. I don't know if you know that. I'm leading that, so that alumni, industry, students, faculty can collaborate, right? So that is one thing. Second is we are also talking to IT industries to align with them to a certain extent. You can't change everything just for some one industry, but to a certain extent to understand what is their requirement. So they are also understanding us, right? So that will take some time to align, and it's not like a funnel that you just complete a course in SIGCHI and you go and join Google. It's not like that. Design is a very open field, right? Yeah, and also it depends on your interests. And companies are changing every day, especially with AI. Right? You can't expect that I'll graduate from SIGCHI and join Google in 4 years. You don't know what will happen to Google. It'll be around, but they may not request precious. Agentic AI might take over at that level. So the future is very dynamic. Okay, and we have to bridge the gap, and we are doing that. Maybe it'll take a couple of years.
I'd also like to see more persistence from you guys. You code in R for a cycle, and then you forget about it for 4 cycles. And then you say, I'm doing this thing and I want to do it in R. You have lost. If you decide that some skill is worth retaining till the end of time, whether or not it's actually happening in a course, you need to hack it. You have to keep at it. It's like carpentry or woodwork or any other skill. You have to keep, even if it's coding, just keep on it. 2 hours a day you have to code. Unless you do that, you will not be able to produce a body of work. So you have 4 years. That's just one less than the number of years that man is asking for, right? Just say, I've been coding in Python for 4 years, starting from my first year. And look at it with a straight face and say it. That man will have to eat his words. He will really have to eat his words. How do you know? Here's my portfolio. Take it. There are 20 data visualizations, 3 machine learning programs, 1 deep learning, and they'll goggle at you. How did you do this? By doing 2 hours every day. I think we are not, I will say this, we are not enough process oriented. We think of what's going to happen 6 months from now, 1 year from now. You do it today. Right? Yoga doesn't work for you on a daily basis, but you have to do it daily because then it will work at the end of 3 years. Right? I think you need to code every day or saw wood every day, whatever it is. Then it will work. And that opportunity, I think this place has to give you. And it is probably not, again, That's not for me to say, but that opportunity you need to have, where I can say, if I have 2 hours a week, can I go off and sit with Vivek and code? That should be something you do every day of your life as long as you're here. Then you are sorted.
Right.
The present makes a difference, not the future or the past.
I think we should also have clarity as to this is what I want, this is what my...
You might not have that clarity,
Yeah.
but there will definitely be some interest,
Some interest.
right? See, the curiosity has to be there. Okay, you may indulge in something and then say, okay, this is too much for me. That's okay, but if you don't even,
Try.
play around with that or try, then there is a issue.
It's also a shiny object syndrome, right? There's something new, shiny, okay, pick it up. That's the shiny, pick it up, right?
Yeah.
That's why you stop doing that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think this whole thing of passion is overrated, right? You need mastery, right? So people say find your passion, that's BS, right? Can you become the master of 3 things, that long limb of the T? You have 4 years time to do it. You can. You can. And if you haven't, then you have been fooling around. I will be very careful.
Wake up.
We can move to like a short rapid fire round now.
Ooh.
So we are going to ask you questions and you have to answer it really quickly in 1 word or 1 sentence. 1 book you keep returning to.
The ending of time.
Okay.
Skin in the game.
Okay.
1 tool you secretly dislike.
Nothing really. I dislike my own ability or disability of the tool. The tool itself is fine. I have to bend it. So if I'm not able to use the tool, I think there's something lacking in me. The tool is fine.
What about you?
Blender.
But why?
I agree.
I don't use it. Everybody talks about that.
One thing that you've unlearned or you've learned differently after a student interaction in Srishti. One thing that you've unlearned or you've learned differently after a student interaction.
To be patient.
Pronouns.
Right.
Where I came from, pronouns didn't matter. But here they matter a great deal. And whether necessary or not, you have to think about it. But I had to really get into pronouns after I came here.
So now that internship season is coming and everyone is losing their stuff, we have a bit of a section about like the industry. So a lot of the students around us aim for a hybrid role between technology and design. So what do you think they should be really preparing for, like beyond just their skill sets?
There is nothing to prepare, if you ask me.
Okay.
So what is the motive of internship?
Gaining experience.
To understand how companies function.
Yeah.
The most important thing is how you collaborate with people, how you work with other people. Right? That is the most important thing. With 10 weeks of internship, you are not going to master anything. Right? It's impossible to master. Right? So you need to be open. Right? You might not have anything related to your interest, worst case, but there are many things you can learn. And that should be a motto, be open-minded. Right? You know that Google pays, even Microsoft pays money for you to find bugs in the system. Right? That's the hardest thing today. Yeah?
Is that a valid skill to build?
Testing is a very complex thing.
Thing.
It's a very, very creative and a complex thing.
Yes, it is.
Right? Now suppose you have, let's say, typically enterprise applications will have 10,000, 20,000 test cases. Now you add a new feature there. Imagine you have to run through all the 20,000 test cases.
Regulation.
Right? It's crazy. It's going to cost you money because time. So there are methodologies where you just test 20% of it.
Right.
Dr. Taguchi's principle. Right? 20% will take care of 80% of your functionality.
Even you can do a Monte Carlo random.
Yes, exactly.
To give you the shape and contour of where the thing breaks.
So there are brilliant ideas there. So testing, without testing, you can't release a product. Right? Yeah. It sounds very mundane and very insipid, but it's a top class.
Right.
You learn a lot. Yeah.
So what are some challenges from your industry that students often don't see in the classrooms?
From my industry?
Yeah.
How do you mean? I've been more than one, so I mean, I just like you to get a little.
You can pinpoint any one which you have seen that students are not able to understand or apply.
Okay, I'll go back to autobiography, right? When I finished my masters, right, I thought I knew everything about telecom. I did know a fair amount of stuff. And they said, go into the lab and tell me what you see. I couldn't understand anything. The hardware looks different. I was in a space environment where things go into space. something that you draw as a diagram in a textbook as a multiplier or a mixer looks completely different actually when you see it.
Right.
So I had to learn the language of hardware. What does this thing look like when it performs this function which was defined in this textbook which I learnt in 4th year, cycle 2, course number 3 and got my A3 done. That was a shock. It took me 6 months to wrap my head around all the equipment and all the components that I was likely to work with. That's something is a gap. I mean, unless we have an industry standard lab here, I don't think we'll ever get that.
I think I won't take it a specific example. I think if you are aligned to technology, it is continuously changing, right? So you have to be open to learning new things. It's not just tools, right? Technologies, very technical stuff. So you have to be open to that. See, if you look at my experience from the 90s to 80s, 88 I was coding in COBOL, MF COBOL on Unix. You don't have Unix now, you have distributions of Unix, Linux, all the stuff, right? So COBOL, MF COBOL to today, I was lucky and you are also lucky because we saw technology changing at a very rapid pace. Now it's different. So we didn't have, everything was synchronous, then synchronous came, Ajax came, XML or HTTP, XML is invented, then we have JSON today, then we had all kinds of stuff. So we had to learn. And mine was an organic way of go company A is to work on this, now new company came, move there. So it is going to happen. And the pace is much faster now, right? So that ability to learn quickly and predict what might change. And you have to be very on your toes on that.
True. Very true.
I think you have pretty much answered the next question I was about to ask, like what is this one skill or mindset that usually students overlook upon but is really the need of the hour? Ability to adapt.
Yeah. Most important thing. See, I think if I look at this in a different perspective, if you are deeply interested in something, these things will automatically happen. I don't have to plan for the future, right? If you're deeply interested, you're curious in so many dimensions, you will do it naturally. Then if you're not deeply interested but you are doing it because to sustain, then everything becomes a challenge, right? Then you have to look for answers for everything. This is what I feel. Correct me if I'm wrong.
As students, you want to be different and yet you want to be the same at the same time, don't you? Yeah. You don't want to stick out as anything. Yet you don't want to say, Aditi Mundra is spending the next 6 months learning Driz. What the hell is Driz, right? Nobody wants to stick out like that. Everybody wants to do a checkbox thing, saying, I've done this, you've done that, yeah, so we have got the same checks on our boxes. One or two things are different, but not enough to But finally, what makes you really valuable is the way you're different, right? So I think you need to dare a little bit more. Can I say, I'm going to marry this thing for the next 1 year and just master the damn thing? It will help me 40 years from now, that's fine. And I don't mind looking dumb in front of my friends or front of other people. So I think we are too scared, I think, of network effects and looking sideways all the time.
Yes.
That's not what you should be doing.
Again, a little more philosophical aspect, competition. See, competition may be good or could be detrimental. You are continuously comparing yourself with somebody, right? Let's say I'm comparing myself with you and you're also, working and teaching Python. So I compare you and I'm trying to beat you in that. But maybe your ability is not, your capability is not so good. Maybe there's somebody else better than you. But my benchmark is always you. And maybe my capability is far more than you, but my benchmark is only so much.
Right.
So I'm really not improving.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So if I forget my neighbors, I just delve into what I'm interested, I go deep. I'll go much further.
Makes sense.
So continuously comparing yourself with somebody is a big problem.
True.
Right?
I agree.
I mean, Apple says think different, right? But that's really what it is, right? Even though the grammar is bad there, it should be differently. But at least, can you think a little different from other people, saying this is something important, I will just do this, even though nobody around me is doing it. To be a loner, to be an exception is a bold step, and you need to at least be that in something.
Great.
So one thing is building capabilities like you guys are talking about, one thing is building skills. So like we were talking previously about tangible and intangible outcomes, I think when we look around at our peers or our environment, we can gauge the skills that they are. But capabilities is something that we are not able to look for or like compare ourselves. So oftentimes it is that we are trying to build our skills more than our capabilities. So how do you think we should navigate into building our capabilities further?
Good question. See, I feel you're not indulging into the activity. You're not making something.
Right.
You're just looking at a surface level. At the surface level, you see only skills.
Yeah.
Right? The moment you go deeper into a subject, capability will actually manifest. Okay, so you will have to sort of indulge, dirty your hands, get into the subject. Right? So I feel it's as simple as that.
Right.
So my question is, let's say I try a tool for the very first time and I do not know my capability into it, whether I'm inherently gifted at it or I have to work my steps towards it. And now let's say I try it, I have my interest into it, and also I am, let's say, naturally gifted at it to a certain level, like I can grasp things quickly. Now I have established a fact that I've got competence in this sector. So if I leverage it by working, let's say, 6 months into it, I'm able to create good output. But there are many times when we try a tool and that we have interest into it, but we are not able to gauge our own capability of whether we have competence in that tool that could give us the outcome we want in 6 months. Like this articulation and clarity of thought doesn't come very intuitively for our students, because we are not really taught to think in the way where our strengths lie and where our weaknesses lie. So how do we gauge that?
I think you're very brutal on yourself. First part. Second is, see, you're looking at, first thing is you have to be enrolled into working with the product or the tool. I feel there is a problem of being enrolled. You don't see the usefulness of that. You don't see the utility of the tool for you. That's why you're doubting that after 6 months it might not be useful, or I might not have the required skills, or required whatever capability skills, right? I feel that is the bigger problem. Instead, it is a tool in front of you. You start using it. If you're not interested, or if you feel little aloof from that, that means it's an enrollment problem. You should have a dialogue with your faculty, right? I feel that is the only way you can sort it out. And you don't have to be brutal, and don't try to extrapolate what will happen after 6 months. Why the future? It's a learning space now. Focus on the present right now, right?
Before you get into unconscious or conscious capability, you have to suck at something. You have to really suck at something, no matter how old you are. When you are doing something for the first time, you suck at it. Parenting, you think anybody has practiced parenting? When I had my daughter for the first time, that was the first child I ever had in my life. I didn't know how to parent. I'd see everybody else, I had no practice, right? So if you are learning something new, you have to positively suck. And the hardest thing is to put up with the sucking, right? How long can you be a sucker at something before you're really serious, right? Before you say, okay, I'm getting better. I'm getting better. And you know what? I am really on a slope of learning which is faster than many of the others. That will come a little later if you want to get that far. But you want to say, I'm learning this so fast, if I stick with this another 6 months, I'll be a master. That is something internal. But you have to go through that period of sucking. There's no option there. Yeah, so I like the idea of unconscious, conscious, but it's secondary. You have to learn to withstand the complete fact that you are sucking at something.
Got it.
Yeah.
I think you can go on with the question now.
Which one is it? Just a second.
I mean, none of us was born a teacher, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure when I joined SIGCHI in 2014, I sucked at teaching. I'm sure. If I look at my own course material from 14, cringe.
But I had another question adding on to that. So do you guys think that natural skill versus talent, like for example, we say that someone is talented. Now, how do you define talent? Do you define talent in terms of someone who grasps things quickly, or do you define it in terms of how much number of hours they have put in to reach the level of competence they are at?
I would say talent is the ability to do something well without seeming to do so, without seeming to break into a sweat. I would break into a sweat to do something on Blender. But maybe Vivek Garady is so good at Blender that he can do it with his left hand and his right eyes closed, right? That's what I could call a talent, right? That would be my definition of talent.
So, like, my question exactly was like, how do you define talented in terms of when somebody is trying something out? Talent builds over time, or talent is something that's a given?
Difficult question.
I think you would see manifestations, right? You would say somebody made this creative leap in the learning very rapidly. You know, most people, if you are a teacher and you have seen 25 students, and one kid is making leaps and bounds through the same material at a faster rate, that's a surprising talent. You're able to make connections pretty well. But I wouldn't make a big deal out of that. Yes, some people learn faster, some people learn slower, some people even learn after the course is over. Right? In fact, Gitu used to say, you know, there's an afterlife to every course. You deliver a course and 5 weeks later you're done and the student is gone. Aditi Mundra is gone. 6 months later she said, I got what you said in the 3rd class but one. It happens. We connect things sooner or later, and sometimes it's later and it's all fine. There's nothing. Yeah, and you can't say that that individual is less talented or more talented. It just they took time, they've evolved differently, and it comes there.
Got it.
I'm almost saying talent is overrated.
So how did the design and technology landscape feel when you started your career, and what's changed the most since then?
The language. You're able to tell people what you do. In the 80s, you couldn't tell anybody what you did. You can't. They would not believe you. Or they would not understand. My parents, I could never tell them what I was doing in the space department. Never. Right? Now, there is a lot of information in the public domain. Even my mom can do ChatGPT if she wants to. Not that she will, but she can. Right? So this whole understanding of what somebody does is easier. So there's less of mumbo jumbo in the air. You can't fool people too long. Right? If you're doing jhadu pocha in a lab, you are doing jhadu pocha and you can't hide that. Right? But if you're doing something very lofty, people will know from your face that it is absolutely lofty, and they will be able to grasp some of the loftiness from what you say or do. So I think that way it's a democratization that has changed. Technology, as Vivek says, will go higher and higher. Things will change, methods will change. But this ability to grasp and understand, I think I'm seeing a lot of change in that.
So as an HCD student, I'm someone who's really interested in storytelling. Like, we have classes where we do tons of research, like 5-6 weeks we just do a lot of research. The problem comes when, like, how do you present this research now? So, like, I want to talk to you about storytelling and presentation. Like, what do you think makes a compelling portfolio, let's say, or a presentation? And what are your tips for, like, storytelling, or just, you know, like a pitch deck of sorts? Like, how do you be better at that?
How will you communicate it to others, basically?
See, the problem is you're lost with so many things there. You have so much information.
Exactly.
Right? You have so much information because your objective and your visions are not clear. This is my experience here with students. Okay? It is, the vision is not a vision. It's like, vision is like, I want to win 100 meter sprint in the Olympics. That's a vision.
Right.
So I have a sport, I have a occasion, I have a sport, 100 meter sprint. If you just say, I want to win a medal, what are you going to train? You're going to lift weights, you're going to swim. So that's how the visions are, so far what I've seen. So I spent a lot of time on that. So you have to be very, very clear. A vision should be able to be described in 2 sentences max. Okay, if you have something much longer than that, it becomes abstract. Right? So if you're not clear what is that you want to do, you will end up with loads of information. Then how are you going to explain that? How are you going to educate anybody else? Okay, this is my take.
Have you seen Moneyball?
I haven't.
So Moneyball is a story about baseball. And one of the iconic scenes in Moneyball is about a discussion in the design room of the team, where a team has researched many players and put the statistics and there. And Brad Pitt comes in and says, they ask him, which player do you want to look at? None of them. I want to throw the whole data out of this. What do you mean? We have spent 3 weeks doing this. I want to look at this guy, and he puts a name on the board. Why? Because he has this one number that separates him from the rest. That's called, in baseball, I don't know what it means, at bat. That's all we're looking at. So every player, every story boils down to 1 or 2 or 3 generalizable truths, right? So if you're doing a lot of research, a lot of stories, a lot of anecdotes, putting those anecdotes out there doesn't tell me anything. As your teacher, I'll say, you have done a great job reading stuff, but you haven't made a crudescence of the whole thing. What are those general truths that you have got from it? Doesn't matter. If you read Pride and Prejudice, you can say it's all about fancy English and about old-fashioned England, but what really is it? 2 people change their minds. It's really that. The woman changes her mind, the man changes her mind, and they fortunately do it at the same time, they marry. That is a phenomenal story. The same story works in Kalidasa. Kalidasa didn't know Sanskrit. His wife slapped him. And he had to learn and say, okay, I change. So if you take these very different stories, they are both about individuals saying, I suck at something, I repeat what I said, and I have to change. Why? Because somebody else cares about me. So if you have these generalizable truths that you draw from 20 stories, these 3 truths, this is the at-bat number from these 3 stories, you're sorted. So you have to summarize, you have to compress. If you say, I have read 25 novels and hear everything, you're fired.
Right. So I think when you are doing your research findings, first is you observe. There's observation, and then turning those observations into insights is something that I'm really trying to learn. So how would you advise someone to build their insight building skills? Because there's no course or something where.
Now how do you record the observations? You're observing something, right? It's a system. You're observing. How are you going to record that? I'm asking you.
How am I going to record that?
Or any of you. How are you going to record that?
Documenting
data.
it, definitely.
Is it just words? Is it unstructured documentation, or you're going to collect some data or data points? So that is important. So you need to have a plan to document your observations. Okay, it's not simply writing something. There is some data. Data is there everywhere, right? Millions of bytes are passing through my body now, right? The cell phone towers here. So there will be numbers, right? You can measure your emotions, everything. So you'll have to plan to collect data. And then you can do a data visualization as he beautifully narrated. And then we can look at insights.
Awesome.
Okay?
You can decide on certain abstract nouns or words that you want to look for. Is there movement? Is there travel? Is there anger? Is there male-female tussle? You can define what these are, right? And you can make a list of 12. And you say yes, 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 no, no, no. And then you have your 30 or 50 stories all yield this kind of yes, no data about things that you're interested in. If that's not enough, make up some more. The simplest question you can ask, what happened? Did they fight? No. Did they travel? Did they buy something? Did they sell something? All those are events and things that you can look at. Even emotions are recorded. Once you record that, you'll know at some point what to throw away because it's not enough, or what is really standing out as, oh man, this happens so frequently, there must be something unique about the fact that this happens across all stories. Right? That's when you start, your surprise is what, you have to take these categorical variables and count with them and say, if the count is really beyond what I think it would happen, that's a surprise. And when you're surprised, that's a gateway for you.
It's similar to sentiment analysis, like your social media. It's done the same similar way.
Right. But when you are trying to bucket your data into yes and no, it's black and whites of these things. So what about the gray areas? How do we map that out?
I think that's cowardice. If you say everything is gray, then you don't make anything. You have to stick your neck out and say this is happening and this ain't happening. You can say the threshold is wherever you want.
That's
how
bias.
vicious is it, how violent is it, you can decide.
That's a bias actually.
Yeah, you say everything is gray, then that's like hedging your bets.
See,
Where are you sticking your neck?
before even collecting data, you are saying it
Always
has to be
saying
like
it's
this.
grey.
This is bias.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so I think this finally brings us to the end of the episode with Vivek and Arvind.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you
you very
so
much.
much for
Thank
your
you.
great
Thank you so much.
insights.
Thank you
We
so
had
much.
amazing stories also.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
A lifetime memory.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. We hope this leaves you with ideas, provocations, and maybe a few tools to explore. See you next time on SigChai podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.